The galactic throne world shimmered beneath three suns, a cathedral of glass and arrogance. Across its horizon rose the spires of Ziwarkath, carved from mirrored stone that reflected the light of 1,000 conquered worlds. Inside the grand amphitheater, the air trembled with ceremony. Every seat was filled. Hundreds of alien races, feathers, scales, fur, and metal, assembled to hear their king humiliate the newest addition to the galactic map, humanity. King Voroth XI stood upon his dais like a living monument, 6 arms spread wide, his golden mandibles flexing with self-satisfaction. "They call themselves humans," he announced, his voice echoing through the neural amplifiers. "They crawl across one blue rock and speak of courage. Yet when invited to our League of Stars, they decline to kneel. Cowards hiding behind oceans and oxygen." Laughter rippled through the chamber, metallic, chittering, clicking, rolling. The Galactic Council fed on mockery. It was cheaper than war. A gelatinous envoy from the Kellenar faction oozed forward. "Majesty, shall we demonstrate their insignificance? I suggest we seize their moon. Perhaps they'll come begging for it back." The king smirked. "No need. Words will suffice. I, Voroth of Ziwarkath, declare the species known as human to be without honor, without bravery, and without consequence. Henceforth, let it be known across all systems. Earth belongs to the meek." The decree pulsed across the galaxy. On distant worlds, merchants toasted to human surrender. Children of insectoid empires drew crude cartoons of stumbling, hairless bipeds. Even the elder species, the long-limbed clerics of Lenara, shook their crystalline heads in weary pity. "They were too new to understand," one murmured. "A shame. Their poets had promise." The laughter died, however, when the ceiling cracked. A streak of silver fire ripped through the throne's holographic dome and buried itself in the marble floor. Steam hissed. Guards raised weapons. The capsule was small, barely the size of a soldier's arm, and shaped like something out of pre-galactic antiquity. Steel, polished by hand. Voroth leaned forward. "Bring it to me." The capsule hissed open. Inside lay a single object, a folded piece of paper. The hall grew quiet. Even the neural relays hesitated, unsure how to process so primitive a gesture. The king unfolded it, and the words, handwritten in looping ink, read simply, "We're sending 2 representatives. Please have coffee ready." For 3 heartbeats, there was silence. Then the amphitheater exploded with laughter, so intense it shook dust from the spires. "2 representatives," wheezed a Saurian admiral, clutching his chest. "Do they mean 2 ships?" No, perhaps 2 of their astronauts," crooned the insectoid Rov, cleaning his mandibles. "They'll come bearing sticks and a cookbook." But among the laughter, the Lenari clerics whispered again. "2," one said softly. "Always 2 when they mean trouble." The king dismissed the thought. He was in high humor now, basking in the echo of his own superiority. "So be it," he declared. "Summon the royal fleet. 10,000 ships shall welcome them. We shall escort our guests home with pageantry." Across the empire, engines ignited like stars. Days later, above Earth's atmosphere, the galactic armada descended, a wall of living metal and arrogance blotting out the sun. But Earth did not respond with sirens or armies. Instead, from a single landing strip outside an abandoned airport, a small craft rose, a gray, unmarked transport. It cut silently through the void and vanished into hyperspace. Inside, 2 men sat opposite each other. One wore a dark suit, the other a battered combat vest draped with an American flag as a cape. Between them rested a thermos of coffee and a half-eaten donut. The man in the suit spoke first, voice calm and measured. "You packed the explosives?" The soldier took a sip from a chipped mug. "Always." "You packed your manners?" "Always." The cockpit light flickered red as the ship slipped into Ziwarkatha's gravity well. Neither man looked out the window. One adjusted his tie. The other hummed softly, a tune that had once played over radios in the ashes of Berlin. On the throne world, the royal parade awaited. Crowds lined the crystal boulevards. Banners depicting the king's sigil fluttered like flames. The royal fleet formed a halo across the upper atmosphere, each ship a monument to domination. When the human transport broke through the clouds, the assembled legions readied their ceremonial plasma rifles. A deep hum filled the air. The craft did not broadcast identification codes. No insignia, no surrender, just silence. The ship landed in the courtyard. Its hatch opened with an unceremonious hiss. Out stepped a tall man in a black suit, shoes polished, expression neutral. Behind him came a giant draped in a tattered flag, his boots echoing against the marble like distant thunder. The crowd waited for them to bow. They didn't. The suited man looked around the vast arena of alien faces and smiled faintly. "Smells like politics," he said. The boogeyman chuckled. "Smells worse." Guards bristled. Energy weapons powered up with a hiss that sounded almost like fear. The king rose, towering above them. So he boomed, "These are the envoys of a cowardly world." The suited man inclined his head. "Envoys? No, your majesty. We're janitors." The king frowned. "Janitors?" The giant grinned. "Yeah, we clean up messes." The aliens didn't understand the words, but they understood the tone, the steady, polite calm that made their instincts crawl. The king laughed, trying to mask the shiver crawling through his spines. "Then clean my boots, Earthman." The suited man reached into his jacket. Every weapon in the hall trained on him. He produced a small steel thermos. "Coffee?" he asked gently. The king's mouth twitched. "You mock me." "No," said the man in the suit, unscrewing the lid. "We're just being polite." He poured 2 cups, steam rising between them. The boogeyman raised his mug, smiled at the armed guards, and took a long sip. The sound was the only thing in the hall. Somewhere deep beneath the throne world, alarms began to flicker, minor signals of interference, dismissed as atmospheric noise. The human folded the thermos cap shut, his voice still level. "You called us cowards," he said. "You might want to keep that thought close. It's the last peaceful one you'll have." The crowd murmured. The king barked laughter again, louder now, desperate to drown his unease. "Is that a threat?" The man smiled faintly. "Sir, if it were, you'd already know." The air seemed to bend around him as he placed the empty thermos on the marble floor. Outside, in the orbit of Ziwarkath, 10,000 warships began to lose their lights, one by one, like candles snuffed in a storm. And on the throne, the alien king, still laughing, did not yet realize that the age of laughter had just ended. The throne hall was rebuilt in haste after the incident, marble polished, banners rehung, fear repainted as ceremony. Yet beneath the laughter, unease slithered like smoke. The humans had arrived 3 hours earlier, escorted by a fleet meant to intimidate them. Instead, 10,000 warships had gone silent. The official report blamed solar interference. The soldiers blamed ghosts. And the king blamed nothing, because kings didn't believe in fear. Now they sat at his banquet table. The 2 men, the representatives. Baba Yaga, as the aliens had come to whisper, wore the same black suit that had survived re-entry. His movements were patient, surgical. When he blinked, even the guards flinched. Beside him, the boogeyman slouched like a mountain, trying to act polite, broad shoulders beneath a cape stitched from the American flag, coffee mug still in his fist. His presence bent the light. His grin didn't. Between them sat plates of galactic delicacies, translucent worm fruit, vaporized nectar, and meat synthesized from extinct predators. Baba Yaga had not touched his. He was stirring sugar into his coffee with a quiet concentration of a man planning a funeral. The alien king tried to reassert normalcy. "Your world honors guests poorly, it seems," he said with a practiced smile. "Do you not offer tribute?" The boogeyman tapped his spoon against the cup. "We did. You're drinking it." Vorath frowned. "This." He raised his crystal goblet. "Fermented water and caffeine. A primitive beverage." "Exactly," said Baba Yaga softly. "It keeps us civil." Around the table, alien delegates exchanged glances. They had expected savages, not sarcasm. The humans' calmness unnerved them. Even the guards began to sweat, if sweat were the right word for metallic scales leaking iridescent fluid. The king leaned forward, his 6 eyes narrowing. "I must admit, your composure is admirable. Most species tremble before my throne." "Maybe they know you better than we do," said Boogeyman. He poured another cup of coffee, the steam rising like incense before execution. Laughter rippled uneasily. The king smiled wider, baring mandibles in mock amusement. "Tell me, human, what brings you here? Surely not courage." Baba Yaga looked up from his cup. His voice carried no hostility, only quiet precision. "Curiosity. You declared war. We came to see why." Voratha's amusement cracked slightly. "You came to see?" "To understand," Baba Yaga corrected. "Every species that's ever declared war on humanity started by calling us cowards. We like to know what kind of idiot we're dealing with." The king's upper hands clenched. His tone dipped into a hiss. "You're bold, Earthman." Baba Yaga's eyes were calm as winter. "You have no idea." For a long moment, neither spoke. The hall seemed to shrink around them. The alien courtiers shifted, wings brushing silk curtains, claws tapping marble. Somewhere a clock ticked, a sound alien civilizations had forgotten. The king finally broke the silence, with a chuckle too loud to be sincere. "I find your manner amusing. But remember, this is Ziwarkath, not your fragile world. Here I decide who lives in peace." Boogeyman leaned forward, elbows on the table. "That's adorable," he said. A ripple of outrage passed through the room. The king slammed a hand down. "Watch your tone, beast." Baba Yaga placed his cup down gently. "Majesty," he said, "my colleague meant no disrespect. He just finds it funny that you think peace is a thing you can decide." The Boogeyman grinned. "Where we come from, peace is what happens when everyone else runs out of ammo." The translator drones hesitated on the word ammo, unsure whether it meant weaponry or warning. The king gestured sharply. "Enough riddles. You will explain your presence or be destroyed." "Destroyed." Baba Yaga tilted his head slightly. Interesting choice of word. He reached into his pocket, and every rifle in the room powered up. The guards' nervous systems hummed like storm wires. But Baba Yaga's hand emerged holding only a small, antique lighter. He flicked it once. A golden flame bloomed. "Fire," he said softly. "You still fear it, don't you?" The guard sensors detected heat levels far beyond expected. The king's throne vibrated. "What trick is this?" "No trick," said Baba Yaga, letting the flame die. "Just a reminder. We were playing with this when your species still prayed to thunder." Boogeyman chuckled. "We still pray, sometimes. Usually before breakfast." The king rose to his full height. "You mock me in my own hall." "Not at all," Baba Yaga replied. "We're just letting you know what's about to happen." At that exact moment, the great hall's lights flickered. One by one, the floating chandeliers dimmed, then brightened, then died entirely. A collective gasp swept through the chamber. The sound of 1,000 alien respirations became the only noise. "Power fluctuations," muttered a technician. "Temporary." A holographic aide burst through the doors, pale as a ghost. "Majesty, our fleets, they've stopped transmitting. No response from command ships. Defense satellites are offline. Even planetary sensors." "Silence," roared the king, his voice trembling with something he refused to name. Baba Yaga calmly poured himself another cup. "That'll be the caffeine hitting," he murmured. Boogeyman raised his mug toward the king. "To courage," he said, smiling. The king's claws dug into the marble. "What have you done?" "Nothing," said Baba Yaga. "We just sent an invitation." "It seems your systems replied." The room's oxygen temperature dropped 3 degrees. Every sensor read it. Every creature felt it. The humans didn't move. They simply watched. "Majesty," whispered one of the clerics, "they're not diplomats." Baba Yaga smiled faintly. "No, ma'am. We're accountants." "Accountants." "Someone has to balance the books." The king stepped down from his throne, eyes glowing with fury. "You think you can threaten me with theatrics? I command empires." Boogeyman rose. The air trembled. His shadow stretched across the marble like the outline of a falling flag. "Funny thing about empires," he said. "They all end up buried under the same dirt." He reached into his pocket, producing a small device no larger than a coin. He placed it on the table. It began to hum, a heartbeat of machinery so subtle it made the glass vibrate. "Timer?" asked Baba Yaga. "Metronome," said Boogeyman. "Helps me keep rhythm." The king lunged forward, fury overcoming pride. "I could tear you apart." Baba Yaga's hand moved faster than sight. A silver pistol appeared, old-fashioned, ballistic. He laid it on the table between them. "You could try," he said, "but your people might not enjoy the recoil." The hall was frozen in disbelief. The alien guards, who had never seen a weapon that fired chemically propelled projectiles, stared at it as though it were witchcraft. Boogeyman leaned toward them. "Don't worry. We saved the fancy stuff for our friends." From the shattered skylight above, the sky flickered, lines of white light crossing like nerves firing through darkness. Something enormous moved behind the clouds, silent, deliberate, unseen. The stars themselves seemed to dim. Baba Yaga's voice was soft, almost sympathetic. "You made one mistake, Majesty. You thought we came here to negotiate." The king's voice broke. "Then why are you here?" "To finish your sentence," said Baba Yaga. The king staggered back. "What sentence?" Boogeyman drained his coffee and slammed the cup upside down on the table. "The one where you called us cowards." Alarms howled through the palace. 1,000 holoscreens blinked to life, displaying red warnings across every sector. Ships exploding silently in orbit. Fleets dissolving into static. The virus moved like fire through glass, data burning at light speed. The Boogeyman turned to the nearest camera drone. "You wanted proof of courage? Here it is." He smiled without warmth. "We came unarmed." And it was true. They had brought nothing, no warships, no armies. Just two men, one lighter, one mug of coffee, and the kind of certainty that only predators carried in their bones. The king tried to speak, but the words turned to static in his throat. His palace flickered between dimensions as systems crashed. Holograms bled light. The murals of his ancestors melted into streaks of blue. Baba Yaga stood, brushed invisible dust from his sleeve, and looked the king in the eye. "Don't worry. It's not extinction. Not yet. We just turned the galaxy off so you'd listen." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. Boogeyman adjusted his cape and muttered, "Told you the coffee was too strong." The king's legs buckled. "What are you?" he whispered. Baba Yaga smiled, eyes glinting with weary mercy. "Human." The word struck like thunder. Then the lights went out everywhere. From the void outside came a whisper carried on static across 1,000 dead channels. A voice, gentle, amused, and terrifyingly calm. "This is Earth Command. Stage 1 complete. Gentlemen, proceed." And somewhere far below, beneath the throne, something began to wake. The throne hall was now a tomb of flickering lights. The power surge had left the palace half dead, screens stuttering, holograms shivering like ghosts. Outside the stained glass walls, the royal city of Ziwarkath lay paralyzed. No engines roared. No ships moved. Every tower that once hummed with life now stood silent, reflecting the cold light of 1,000 dying stars. Baba Yaga sat in perfect stillness at the long table, the untouched coffee steaming faintly beside his hand. Across from him, Boogeyman spun the metronome between his fingers, its faint tick echoing through the silence, like a clock counting down to something unseen. The king had not spoken for a long time. He stood amid his petrified court, a creature built for dominance, now trembling under the weight of something he could not name. Fear was not new to him. It had been a weapon. But this human quiet, was the kind of fear that came before a storm no one could outrun. "What have you done?" he whispered finally. His voice sounded small, stripped of the divine echo the hall had once given him. Baba Yaga didn't look up. "We turned off the noise," he said simply. "You were making too much of it." "My fleets, my world," the king's voice cracked. Boogeyman looked up from his mug, eyes as calm as distant thunder. "Still there," he said. "For now." The king's 6 eyes darted toward the windows, where the stars had gone motionless. You mean to destroy us? Baba Yaga sighed softly, as if explaining to a stubborn child. No, destruction is messy. We prefer order. He rose, smooth and deliberate, and reached for the nearest holographic console. It flickered to life under his touch. The alien symbols dissolved, replaced by Earth's language. Lines of clean, elegant code scrolling in silence. The guards gasped. The console was no longer theirs. The human traced his finger across the screen. This is your planetary AI network, he murmured. It runs your fleets, your markets, your atmospheres. You centralized everything, efficient, yes, but fragile. He pressed one key. The screen froze. Now it listens to us. The king lunged forward, slamming a clawed hand on the table. That is impossible. Boogeyman chuckled. Yeah, that's what your fleet admiral said 30 seconds ago. He's currently finding out otherwise. Impossible, the king screamed, voice cracking through the chamber. Baba Yaga looked at him with a faint smile, a teacher correcting a delusion. You know what they used to say about impossible things on Earth, Majesty? We called them Tuesday. The boogeyman laughed, low and genuine. Damn right. The court was unraveling, ministers whispering, clerics praying in forgotten dialects. A scent of ozone filled the air as data streams collapsed, the digital lifeblood of an empire hemorrhaging into human hands. Baba Yaga kept typing. The code shifted colors, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Operation Polite Extinction, he said, almost conversationally. A contingency we built for this sort of arrogance. The king's voice trembled. Extinction. Not yours, Baba Yaga said. Not yet. Just the systems that let you forget how small you really are. Screens across the hall lit up, hundreds of them, showing cities across the empire. Streets going dark, skies losing their color, machinery falling silent mid-motion. From orbit, the empire looked like a candle flame being pinched out between invisible fingers. Boogeyman rose, his cape dragging across the marble, the flag's stars dull under the half-light. You declared war on humanity. You called us cowards. You woke us up. And now we're teaching you what being awake means. He turned toward the king, eyes narrowing. You've been playing empire for too long. Empires die of comfort. The king staggered back, clutching his crown as though it might protect him. You think this act makes you gods? Baba Yaga finally looked up, and for the first time, there was something in his eyes, something colder than rage, sharper than vengeance. No, he said softly. Just accountants. Balancing what's owed. The words struck harder than any weapon. Around them, alien guards began to retreat instinctively, unable to name the primal recognition crawling up their spines. They'd evolved from predators. But whatever these men were, they hunted deeper. The boogeyman's metronome clicked once more, and he pocketed it. Stage 2. Not yet, Baba Yaga replied. They deserve the courtesy of understanding. He walked toward the king. Every step was measured, every echo deliberate. We've been watching your galaxy for a while. Your wars, your pride. You call us fragile because we bleed. You mistake restraint for weakness. But you forget, every peaceful species began with predators who learned to wait. He stopped inches away. The king could see his reflection in the human's eyes, small, shaking, grotesque. We waited, Baba Yaga said. Long enough to build things you can't imagine. Long enough to turn extinction into an art form we hope never to use. The king whispered, Then why use it now? Baba Yaga leaned close. Because you asked us to. At that, Boogeyman snapped his fingers. The entire palace vibrated as a low hum spread through the foundations. The marble under their feet glowed faintly with red circuitry, thin, branching lines running like veins. Every device in the room began to pulse in rhythm with the same heartbeat-like tone. What is that? The king gasped. Our answer, said Baba Yaga. Not a weapon. A message. Outside, the sky began to move. Not clouds, metal. Thousands of dark shapes unfurled across orbit. Drones shaped like crosses, sleek and silent, descending in patterns too precise for nature. Each bore the same insignia. A minimalist circle with 13 stars inside. The symbol of Earth Command. The king's voice broke entirely. You would burn the galaxy? Boogeyman smiled faintly. Nah, we're just turning the lights off so the grown-ups can talk. Then talk, the king shouted. Tell me your demand. Baba Yaga paused. Our demand is that you remember who we were before you called us cowards. He gestured toward the window. One of the orbiting drones detached, plummeting through the atmosphere. It struck the ground miles away, a silent flash, white as dawn. A shockwave rolled through the horizon. Not an explosion, a pulse. When it passed, everything electronic within its radius turned to glass. Boogeyman watched the horizon glow and nodded. Polite enough. Always, said Baba Yaga. The king fell to his knees, crown rolling across the floor with a hollow clang. His voice cracked under the weight of defeat. If you have the power to end us, why haven't you? Baba Yaga studied him for a moment, then turned away. Because mercy's still a habit we haven't broken. Boogeyman picked up the crown and placed it gently on the table. You're lucky. Usually, when we finish our coffee, things end worse. The king looked up, trembling. You're monsters. Baba Yaga smiled. No, we're human. Monsters came after us and tried to copy the formula. The silence that followed was unbearable. Then across the dead network, a single transmission flared to life. An image of Earth's moon, gray and calm, overlaid with a blinking symbol. An invitation. Baba Yaga tapped the console. It's from command, he said quietly. Stage 3 confirmed. Boogeyman's eyes narrowed. Already, they moved early. The king's trembling voice broke the stillness. What is stage 3? Baba Yaga looked at him, his expression unreadable. The polite part ends. The lights went out again, deeper this time. So deep even the stars seemed to retreat. Somewhere high above, a voice echoed through every dead frequency, calm as rain on metal. Protocol unlocked. Commence the extinction courtesy. And in the distance, the sound of 10,000 drones folding their wings filled the air like the breath of something ancient, patient, and awake. The dawn over Zyarkath arrived without sunlight. The planetary shields had collapsed during the night, leaving the atmosphere to shimmer with the residue of orbital fire. From the royal citadel, the horizon looked like the inside of a dying ember, clouds glowing faintly red, the skeletons of warships drifting like ash. The silence was so complete it felt sacred. The galaxy, for the first time in millennia, had stopped talking. Baba Yaga stood at the edge of the throne balcony, hands clasped behind his back. The wind whipped his coat, carrying with it the faint scent of iron and smoke. Below, entire city blocks flickered in and out of power, like candles unsure whether to live or die. Behind him, the Boogeyman poured the last of their coffee into a dented mug. It was lukewarm now, but he didn't seem to mind. Stage 3 worked too well, Boogeyman said, his voice gravel over thunder. Baba Yaga didn't answer immediately. His eyes scanned the sky, tracing the trails of the drones as they reconfigured above the stratosphere, forming a silent constellation in the shape of an outstretched hand. It always does, he said at last. People don't believe in humanity until it starts reorganizing their stars. The king sat slumped on his throne, stripped of his regalia. The crown that once made him a god now looked like a broken bracelet at his feet. His eyes, bloodshot and vacant, followed the human's every movement with the horrified fascination of a priest watching his own religion burn. You've killed us, he whispered. Boogeyman took a slow sip and shrugged. Not yet. Then why stop now? Baba Yaga turned to him, the motion deliberate, almost gentle. Because the message isn't the death. The message is the pause before it. The king shook his head, unable to comprehend. You came here for vengeance. No, Baba Yaga said softly. We came for demonstration. He stepped closer, his boots echoing through the ruined hall. You declared war on a species that studied extinction like mathematics. We learned it from our own history, perfected it, and locked it away. You reminded us where we kept the key. Boogeyman laughed under his breath. We're terrible at ignoring invitations. Outside, one of the orbital drones descended. It entered the atmosphere without sound, an obsidian arrow against the red sky. The clouds parted as it slowed, releasing a faint harmonic hum that vibrated through every living thing. It landed in the courtyard with the delicacy of a falling feather. From its side unfolded a small hatch, and a metallic cylinder emerged. The king flinched as if expecting a bomb. But Baba Yaga only smiled. Not destruction. Declaration. The cylinder opened, projecting a holographic field that filled the entire courtyard. The image was unmistakable. Earth. Blue, radiant, serene. A woman's voice, calm and tired, echoed through the hall. This is command. Operation concluded. All hostile networks neutralized. Await final statement from field agents. Boogeyman looked at his partner. Your turn. Baba Yaga nodded once. He stepped into the holographic light, his form silhouetted against the image of Earth like a ghost returning home. He spoke quietly, his tone neither cruel nor triumphant, but heavy with a kind of sadness that follows inevitability. To the Galactic Council, he began. You called us cowards. You mistook silence for fear, patience for weakness. Humanity doesn't conquer for glory. We do it to survive the things you still can't imagine. Every scar we carry taught us to end wars before they start. The holographic broadcast transmitted across hundreds of systems simultaneously. On distant worlds, alien children looked up at the night sky and saw the human face outlined against a blue planet. His voice was soft, yet every word cut through static like a blade. We've studied you, he continued. We know your weapons, your languages, your myths. And we know this truth, you all fear your monsters. But you've never met the ones who learned to drink coffee with theirs. Boogeyman chuckled, setting his mug on the edge of the king's throne. Told you coffee was important. Baba Yaga went on. This isn't conquest. It's calibration. The galaxy has grown complacent. You forget the cost of peace. We're here to remind you, peace isn't free. It's rented, and the rent is due. For a moment, nothing moved. The projection of Earth shimmered faintly, its oceans glinting like veins of light. Then the transmission ended. The hologram vanished, leaving only the sound of wind moving through the broken arches. The king rose shakily to his feet. And what happens now, he asked. Baba Yaga turned away from him. Now you rebuild. Slower. Quieter. And when you look up at the night sky, remember the constellation shaped like a hand. That's us. Reaching. Watching. Waiting for someone to forget their manners again. Boogeyman smirked. And if they do, we'll skip the coffee next time. The king's voice broke into a whisper. You mean to rule the galaxy through fear? Baba Yaga paused. No, Majesty. We mean to preserve it through memory. Outside, the first sunrise in days began to struggle through the smog. Light filtered over the ruins, turning metal to gold and dust to glitter. The silence no longer felt empty, it felt watchful, as though the entire planet was listening for the next sound humanity might make. Boogeyman walked toward the balcony, the flag cape dragging behind him through the ash. You ever think we overdo it? Baba Yaga followed, his tone faintly amused. Every time. And yet here we are again. Habit. They stood side by side, two silhouettes framed by the newborn light, the remains of an empire stretching out before them. Below, alien survivors were emerging from the shadows, engineers, soldiers, children. None dared approach. They looked up at the humans with the reverence once reserved for gods, and the terror reserved for predators. Boogeyman raised his mug in a silent toast to them. To the living, he murmured. Baba Yaga's reply was barely audible. And to the lesson. The king sank back into his throne, no longer a ruler, just another witness. His voice, fragile as glass, reached them one last time. If we ever meet again, will you show mercy? Baba Yaga looked down at him, and for the first time, a trace of sorrow crossed his expression. That depends, he said, on whether you bring the coffee. The two men turned toward their ship, a small, battered vessel dwarfed by the silent towers. It hummed to life, powered not by grandeur, but by the stubborn reliability of human engineering. The drones above shifted formation, opening a path through the clouds. As they ascended, The palace below seemed to shrink into insignificance, a monument to pride undone by politeness. From orbit, the scarred world looked peaceful again, wrapped in its haze of resignation. In the cockpit, Boogeyman leaned back and kicked his boots onto the console. "You think they'll come after us again?" Yaga poured the last of the coffee into his cup, watching the swirl of steam rise in the dim cabin light. "No," he said, "but they'll tell stories." "What kind?" "The kind that start with a laugh," Yaga said quietly, "and end with a prayer." They broke atmosphere. The stars opened before them, vast and unjudging. One by one, the drones followed, silent, gliding in formation until they resembled a trail of embers curving through space, like the smoke of a candle just blown out. Behind them, across 1,000 worlds, the name human took on new meaning. In markets and temples, in barracks and nurseries, the story spread like wildfire. That two men came drinking coffee and left holding the galaxy's pulse. Some called them monsters, others gods. But all agreed on one thing. The next time humanity sent a message, they'd make sure to listen before laughing. Yaga set the mug down, eyes on the fading planet. "Funny," he said softly. "All that war, and it still comes down to who brews the better cup." Boogeyman grinned. "Yeah, guess we won that one too." Their ship vanished into the starfield, leaving behind a single faint transmission, a line of Earth humor, drifting across the galaxy like a ghost of smoke. "Thank you for your hospitality." The coffee was strong. So were we. And somewhere, in the hushed dark of the galaxy, 1,000 alien kings ordered their servants to learn how to make it.